Four factors affect the solar angle and consequently the seasons on our planet: the revolution of the Earth around the Sun, the rotation of the Earth around its own axis, the tilt of the Earth's axis, and a concept called axial parallelism. The Earth revolves around the Sun at an average distance of 93 million miles. The pathway is elliptical. The distance is 91.5 million miles in early January, which we call perihelion, and 94.5 million miles in early July, which we call aphelion. The orbit is the path of the Earth around the Sun. The plane of the Earth's orbit is called the plane of the ecliptic. The Earth rotates counterclockwise around its own axis when viewed from a spot over the North Pole. The tilt of the Earth's axis, also called inclination, is the reason for the different seasons on our planet. The axis of rotation is offset 23.5 degrees from a perpendicular plane through the ecliptic. Axial parallelism refers to the fact that the Earth axis maintains its alignment during the orbit around the Sun. A solstice is either of the two events or days of a year when the subsolar point is at its greatest distance from the equator. The summer solstice occurs around June 21st. The subsolar point is located at the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees northern latitude. All locations north of 66.5 degrees north experience the polar day. That is when the sun does not sink below the horizon and we have 24 hours of daylight. All locations south of 66.5 degrees south experience the polar night. The sun does not rise above the horizon and we experience 24 hours of night. The winter solstice occurs around December 21st. The subsolar point is located at the Tropic of Capricorn at 23.5 degrees south. All locations north of 66.5 degrees north experience the polar night. All locations south of 66.5 degrees south experience the polar day. The word equinox is derived from the Latin words equus and nox, equal and night. An equinox is the event or day when the sun is directly above the equator. This event occurs twice a year. Around March 21st, which we call the March equinox or vernal equinox, and around September 21st, which we call September equinox or autumnal equinox. It refers to the fact that all locations on the planet experience nights which are 12 hours long on this day. The declination of the sun is the angle between the rays of the sun and the plane of the Earth's equator, or the distance between the subsolar point and the equator in degree. It is approximately 23.5 degrees during the summer solstice, negative 23.5 degrees during the winter solstice, and 0 degrees during the equinoxes.
Seasons are changing, but a lot more is happening than the changing of leaves. Seasons are affected by solstices and equinoxes. There is the winter solstice, the vernal equinox, the summer solstice, and the autumnal equinox. A solstice is when the sun in the sky reaches its northernmost or southernmost extremes. This happens because of the Earth's tilt. The summer solstice marks the first day of summer around the 21st of June. On that day in the northern hemisphere, the sun is the highest it ever gets, which results in the summer solstice being the longest day of the year. The northern hemisphere is tilted toward the sun, so the sun is located right above the northern continents. But the winter solstice is the opposite. It occurs around the 21st of December, and the sun is very low in the sky. This results in the shortest day of the year because the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun. An equinox is different than a solstice. An equinox is when the sun is directly over the equator and the sun is shining on half of the Earth equally. However, most places on Earth aren't seeing exactly 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. Also during an equinox, the Earth's axis isn't tilting towards or away from the sun. There are two equinoxes, the vernal equinox, which occurs at the end of March, and the autumnal equinox, which occurs at the end of September. They work the same way, but the difference is that they occur on different sides of the sun. The vernal equinox is around the start of spring, because after the equinox, the northern hemisphere will be tilting toward the sun, so it'll get warmer. The autumnal equinox is the opposite. The northern hemisphere starts tilting away from the sun around the first day of fall, and it starts to get colder. It was officially fall on September 22nd this year, but the autumnal equinox is on September 23rd because the equinox is actually determined by the placement of the Earth in relation to the sun. So, after the autumnal equinox on the 23rd, we will start seeing more night than day.
Here is another illustration that will help you understand what is happening. We are at the March equinox, and you see that all locations on Earth experience 12 hours of daylight. The vertical sun's rays are striking the equator. Notice that as we are moving towards summer, more of the northern hemisphere is covered by daylight, meaning we have longer days, shorter nights. This is our situation in June during the summer solstice. The vertical rays are striking the Tropic of Cancer. Notice the short days in the southern hemisphere with polar night at the South Pole. This is its situation at the September equinox with vertical sun's rays striking the equator and 12 hours daylight all over the planet. As we are moving towards the December solstice, you see that we have long days in the southern hemisphere, short days in the northern hemisphere, and the vertical sun's rays striking the Tropic of Capricorn. Notice polar night at the North Pole. Now we are moving back to the March equinox with 12 hours daylight all over the planet.